Welcome to Nasdaq Trade Talks. I'm Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq. Joining me is Deborah Fuhr, founder of ETFGI, to review the key themes that emerged from the ETFGI Global ETFs Insight Summit, virtually, of course. Deborah, it's great to have you with us. Welcome back to Trade Talks.
Thank you for having me.
All right, Deborah, before we get into the key themes that evolved, how well did ETFs perform during the volatile COVID-19 market volatility?
I think ETFs performed really well. When you think about it, we had some of the highest ever trading days. We had very significant inflows and outflows, so creations and redemptions, including in fixed income ETFs. So there were always concerns about would ETFs be able to handle large volatility days, and would fixed income ETFs be able to handle large inflows and outflows? And all of that happened really well. So I would say ETFs actually busted a number of myths that were out there.
How's the industry and investors responding to the new ETF rule?
I think that ETF investors in the industry find the ETF rule to be very helpful. It gives a standard level playing field to everyone. It makes it easier and faster to be able to bring new products to market. The ability to use custom baskets, which benefit both the investors and the ETF in terms of performance, are all things that everyone sees as being a good thing for the industry, and was definitely mentioned a number of times.
Does the industry view the Federal Reserve buying ETFs as a good thing?
I definitely think they do. It really shows that ETFs are a legitimate investment product, especially because the Fed is buying high yield and investment grade ETFs. An area where there's often been concern, could people get in? Could they get out? Are they priced appropriately? And so clearly they own over $9 billion in that set of categories right now. And I do think it legitimizes ETFs as a product that makes sense as an investment product, especially in the fixed income space.
Are you seeing growing interest in semi-transparent ETFs?
That's a relatively new thing. They were only approved back in December, and we've seen 11 products come to market so far this year. So there's definitely a lot of interest from asset managers who didn't want to go into the index space, seeing it being very fee wars, and also seeing that it was very concentrated with the top 3 providers capturing a lot of those assets. So we see a lot of new ETF issuers coming to market, and I think we'll continue to see that happening going forward.
I would imagine there's still a healthy interest in ESG assets.
ESG is actually pretty new to the US. So we've actually seen the biggest growth. So if you look at the category, about 51% of the assets in ESG ETFs are sitting in Europe, which is surprising given if you look at the global ETF industry with $6.3 trillion, 70% of the assets sit in US domiciled products. So US is gaining a lot of interest in this category. We've seen a lot of new launches, but a lot of times the actual investors are coming from Europe. So we see it's moving to the US, and I think it will continue because of the pandemic and because of social changes and currents that are happening. These are really driving an interest and awareness of the need for this type of investing. And it doesn't mean that you're giving up performance. I think before people thought that excluding sin stocks meant you were giving up performance. The way the indices are created today is very different. And being invested in more diverse or better governed companies actually gives you better performance.
And Deborah, let's wrap up with some highlights from the keynotes that you had. You had Jim Ross, Anna Paglia, Alex Vittori, Rick Redding, sharing some useful and relevant insights and experience. What were some of the key themes they touched on?
I think they all touched on things that they've seen over the years in terms of the growth of the ETF industry, how it's actually grown faster and a little bit differently than they thought. And they're all really optimistic on the future for ETFs. And I think their personal takeaways is put your hand up, show that you're interested, do things, take the challenge. So I think it was very inspiring to hear them speak. They come from different angles, but I think they've all really enjoyed the camaraderie in the ETF industry, that the industry works together to grow the pie as opposed to competing among one another. So yeah, it was very positive and inspiring to hear them all speak.
All right, Deborah, great to see you as always. Thanks for joining me on Trade Talks.
Thank you.
And thanks for joining me. I'm Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq.